This is the Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition. Good evening, all. I'm Shashina Roll. As always, it is so great to have you with us. Topping news, another somber day here on Grand Bahama, as 5 of the 9 victims who died in that tragic plane crash a week ago began making the journey home today. The crash victims getting a grand send-off as a ceremonial procession was held throughout the streets of Grand Bahama. Joan Davis Roll has our top story.
It was a somber occasion as family members, law enforcement and government officials gathered for the next leg of a tragic journey. A journey which began a week ago when a United States registered Learjet owned by the late Dr. Myles Munroe crashed on Grand Bahama, killing everyone on board. For 2 brothers who live on Grand Bahama, L. Kenny and Dr. Freeman Lockhart, the dreadful journey continued Monday morning when officials at Rescue Mortuary, where the bodies of the late Dr. Myles Munroe, his wife Ruth Ann, Pastor Richard Pinder and pilot Captain Stanley Thurston were prepared for the grand return back home to the nation's capital. They described the devastating scenario as surreal. The initial sting of death, they say, has left a void as they reflected on the life of their sister, Pastor Ruth Ann Munroe, the life partner of Dr. Myles Munroe for some 35 years.
It was a real shock. You know, I was on the road at the time when on Sunday afternoon. So needless to say, it was a real shock when you hear news like this. The first thing you want is confirmation.
Shocked and in disbelief when it was confirmed. It was very, very difficult. Ruth was, she was a very kind, very loving, very strong family person, caring. You know, you could ask her for anything, and if she could help, you could be assured that you will be helped.
Once the bodies draped in Bahamian colors were loaded in the various hearse, a massive police-led procession followed. From Coral Road, it was on to Settlers Way and Yeager's Funeral Home on Queens Highway, where they were united with fallen co-pilot Captain Frank Con Cooper. Media mogul, BFM official and Dr. Myles Munroe protege Debbie Bartlett says, in death, Dr. Myles and those who perished have all unified this country's best.
As we came in the motorcade, my heart leapt for joy because Rescue is working with Yeager. There is no competition. There's completion. Freeport News is working with ZNS News. The PLP and the FNL are working with all enthusiasm. The government has been on top of its game with efficiency, with compassion, with precision, with honoring the lives of everyone that really, by destiny, chose Freeport to memorialize this event, this sacrifice of life, forever and ever.
As the bodies of Dr. Myles and Ruth Ann Munroe were lifted on board a Sky Bahamas aircraft, Bartlett called for the continued support and prayers for the children, 2 of whom have been left fatherless and motherless.
I want to say that on behalf of the family, Pastor Sheena, Myles Jr., he is no longer Chiro, he is Myles Jr. If you hear them speak, you'll say, hey, hey, hey. If you hear Renor, in other words, they have reproduced themselves and their family. Both Pastor Myles, with Pastor Myles Jr. and Teresa the daughter, Pastor Sheena and Pastor Richard, with Renor and Talia. Let's uplift the entire families.
The aircrafts with the bodies then took flight, soaring the skies they fell from a week ago. This time, the destination, homeward bound. Joan Davis Roll, ZNS Network News.
Now, the mortal remains of the former leaders of BFM would not leave alone. Just as they have done over the past several years, they were accompanied by 2 men who have piloted them around the world. Though in different aircrafts this time around, they took the journey home today. As the country awaits funeral arrangements for all of the victims in the November 9th crash, Megan Shepard picks up the story.
The body of co-pilot Furkan Cooper being transported to the Grand Bahama International Airport Monday morning following that fatal plane crash last Sunday. Yeager Funeral Home was responsible for preparing the remains. Director Jamal McSweeney says once Cooper's mortal remains land in New Providence, arrangements will be handled by Bethel's brothers, morticians.
Normally they would have a lot of trauma, so when they go back to Nassau and the family making arrangements, they will then decide on how they'll go about it as far as viewing, or will they not have that. But that's something personal that they normally take care of with the funeral director, and that's determined on how comfortable they are.
Cooper's body has been transported to the nation's capital, where he lived with his wife, Dr. Tina Cooper, and 2 small children. Here on Grand Bahama, however, his father-in-law, retired former Superintendent of Police Wellborn Boodle, handled arrangements. While at the funeral home, Boodle understandably denied an interview, but says family members are doing their best to cope with the loss.
Their family members are back in Nassau, so what they did was they used other next of kin relatives to act on their behalf, but I don't think they traveled. So their next of kin was given permission to act on their behalf until the bodies return back to Nassau.
Now that the mortal remains are headed to New Providence, and as the funeral service approaches, McSweeney says all other decisions will have to be determined by the Cooper family.
There was a lot of telephone calls and a lot of concern, and due to the nature of what happened, so it had you kind of busy, because there were calls in the morning, at night, and they want to know what's happening and they want to make sure everything goes well. So that was a little tension, but nothing out of the norm. You're used to that.
Captain Furkan Cooper's body, along with 4 other crash victims, were escorted to the airport by several police officers. Onlookers and mourners gathering to glimpse the caskets. Captain Cooper's body was placed in a Flamingo Air aircraft, along with Captain Stanley Thurston, for their final flight back to New Providence. Officer in charge of Grand Bahama ACP Emerick Seymour assisted in coordinating the final salute for victims of November 9th plane crash.
This is a sad day in the life of Bahamians, and of course citizens of the world, because Dr. Myles and of course his wife and the other persons who perished in this unfortunate incident, they were known worldwide, and they were part of us, and we are so happy to have had them a part of us, Bahamians. And to see how they would have lost their lives is really, nothing short of breathtaking for all of us. And so the organization is happy to be a part of this process, to assist the family and of course the other members of the BFM family to a smooth transition.
Seymour says he is pleased to report that the police portion of the investigation is nearing completion, and the files will be delivered to Her Majesty's coroner in a matter of days. However, they are still awaiting information on the exact cause of the crash.
The exact cause of the crash has not been determined at this time. Remember, there are several other aspects of the investigation that's going on at the moment, and they're being done by the National Transportation Service Board, NTSB, FAA, and of course the Civil Aviation Authority. Okay, they will determine, based on their findings, based on their investigation, what the probable cause or what the exact cause of the crash is. And so we await those reports.
Now, McSweeney says they will also be responsible for the preparations of the Parks family. Those 3 bodies are expected to be transported to New Providence Tuesday morning. For ZNS Network News, I'm Megan Shepard.
Now, the remains of the 3 members of the Parks family who perished in that November 9th plane crash are expected to be transported to New Providence sometime tomorrow. LeVard and Riddell Parks worked with BFM's youth department. Their young son, Johannan, also died in that crash. Meantime, the U.S. preacher aboard that ill-fated flight, Diego Santiago, was cremated here on Grand Bahama. His ashes were scattered in the sea by his brother. Santiago was a close friend and the spiritual son of Dr. Munroe. He traveled around the world with Dr. Munroe on various Christian missions.